power rankings for the Big Ten.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Mine is below my image, my likeness, and yours is below your image and your likeness on the screen, obviously. So tell me about your Big Ten power rankings and why you think your list is accurate, and like kind of walk me through the groupings, because I can see 1 through 18, but you may think that there's a big drop off after number 4 or number 5, or a big drop
Right.
off of number 14, or maybe number 10 is in a league of their own. Like there's a big drop off from 9 and then a big drop off after 10 as well. Explain that to me if you can.
Okay, so I think that you're going to agree with me when I say 1 through 4 is its own grouping.
Yes.
I think that upper tier of Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State's going to be 4, and then how you sort 1 through 3 is your own opinion, and you're entitled to that. But that's really the first. I mean, what we were talking about earlier with the Big 12. This is what the Big 12 doesn't have. This first grouping. Um, but then past that, I think USC, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and to an extent Rutgers are in this second tier here of teams. Um, Ranking them, that I think they're all going to be identical. Not in play wise or whatever. I think just in general, just overall, I think they're going to be pretty close to each other. There's not going to be that big drop off. There isn't really a drop off at all between USC and Nebraska. There's not really a drop off, in my opinion, between Wisconsin and Rutgers. You can split hairs about who's better, and of course we did that. But from there, um, I think that they're all these teams that can have a surprise run um, that can be these teams.
Yeah.
And then I think Washington at 9 I think Washington is a top 10 team in the Big 10. I just think that they have a pretty low ceiling. Like I don't see them winning past 9. I think that their ceiling is about 8 9 wins. Um from that sense. And then I think Iowa is kind of like you said with 10. I was just kind of there. Like I I don't like them, but Kirk Ferentz, he finds wins. This is what um when Scott Frost was at Nebraska, people were always trying. From what I could see, Iowa versus Nebraska, it's a rivalry. Iowa found the wins. They did, and Nebraska found the losses.
Yep.
And Iowa still finds the wins. They do. They'll pull a couple wins out of their ass that they really shouldn't have any business winning. I mean,
Absolutely. They
they will. So I think when you're power ranking them, I think that their roster doesn't match up well with these other 9 teams in the top 10, but I think that they will be ranked inside this top 7, maybe top 8 because they're going to find those wins.
yeah. Oh yeah, they're gonna punt and kick and scream and just like this ugly earthworm in the ground, just dig their way to win. It's insufferable. I'm glad that Brian Ferentz is no longer there. His nickname on this channel was "He Who Shall Not Be Named." It's just so disgusting. It just
Oh my
I
gosh. I mean,
couldn't watch them. I loved seeing Minnesota beat them last year on that controversial call, because it's what they not the fans, but like it's what that staff deserves for wasting that defense. Is they
oh yeah, and I
deserve a
mean,
game where it, by all accounts and purposes, you lead 10-3 and then you choke and let Minnesota go on a 9-0 run and beat you in your own stadium.
Iowa, I mean, and the fact that they've won 10 games last year with Deacon Hill playing in most of them. Deacon Hill. Goodness. I got to get off of Iowa. I could talk about Iowa all day. Um I really could.
He's just
Michigan State, Michigan State, moving on. They have a
yeah,
ton of upside, but it's going to be a lot of growing pains with them.
yeah.
Northwestern, I love David Braun as a head coach. He's awesome, but I don't think they have the talent to be a top 10. Um they're probably one of the least talented teams in the Big Ten, but just through coaching, I think they're going to be a really good team. Um, and then I have this. I starting with, well, not start. I think Maryland is kind of the in between, and then once you hit Minnesota, on down to UCLA, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana, I think that's kind of the last grouping with Indiana, Illinois, Purdue probably being a little bit step below, but I just really don't like Illinois. If I were to make one change to this, I would put Purdue over Illinois. Don't like Illinois this year. Really don't.
Yeah, and then that's sad because they return a lot more production than they did entering last year, but they just have questions. You have to see if Brett Bielema. It'll all be coaching. It'll all be coaching because they haven't used the portal either. They're going to be very interesting, and they host Kansas. That's a game for revenge.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we might learn a little bit, even though Kansas loses some coaches and their defense. We might learn a thing or two in that game. Like, are they dead, or whoa, could they like win a lot of one possession games or something? Yeah, I don't disagree much with your power ranking. I mean, the biggest thing I disagree with is probably USC at 5 or or Purdue being that low. Like that would be probably it. I could see Washington being as high as 9 with the portal players they've brought in. I could see Minnesota still being like insanely mediocre, even though I think they did well in the portal. And I could see myself being wrong on Maryland taking a big step back. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
like what you've brought on.
Maryland is a tough. It's a pickle to really predict. They're not easy to predict. They lost their 2 3 year starter in Tagovailoa. I don't know too much about MJ Morris. Um, but I don't think they're very deep. Second of all, but I could given in more information, I could be talked into them being a little bit better or a little bit worse than where I have them. Um, Michigan State. Michigan State's another team that's hard to predict. I'm extremely high on Aiden Childs. I love Aiden Childs as a quarterback. He could be a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten Conference by the end of the season. He has the talent.
Totally agree
He
with that.
really, he really does. But you're marrying um, this team that in Michigan State that was really bad last year roster wise, and then you're bringing over half of Oregon State, and there will be growing pains with it. It's going to be like Nebraska last year, just insane growing pains that's going to happen. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I will go as far to say that I think they will reach Indianapolis at some point in Jonathan Smith's tenure because I think they have like a top 10, top 5 staff. But it is year 1. They've lost in the portal. I don't think Tucker recruited not just good players, but some of the players he recruited that are good just aren't team players. Tucker, I don't think was a team player guy as that whole ordeal showed. Um, I like Giles. I really do. I like parts of their O line, and I really like Nathan Carter. I really like their running back Nathan Carter, but
Yeah.
that's basically about it outside of Jordan Hall at linebacker. Um, my Big Ten power rankings, I have the same top 4 as you do. Only thing I would disagree with is I think Penn State can be higher than 4. I know that James Franklin is James Franklin. However, I think Andy Kotelnicki's the best OC in the country. Their defense is really good. The D-line, linebacker core, their D-line returns all their interior players, and Dennis Sutton and moving Abdul Carter to end. They're going to have a vicious pass rush. They've recruited well on the O-line, so if their O-line plays to its ceiling, they, with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, could have really good trench play. And if Aller improves with that scheme that Kotelnicki has, I think they could do some damage. But I do have a hard time seeing them as the best team in the Big Ten. I think that Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan have a much better shot at that, which is why I have them at fourth. I have Ohio State
Right.
1, Oregon 2, Michigan 3, Penn State 4. I just think Penn State is a higher ceiling. I think they have one of the highest ceilings in the country actually. I just think their average level of play isn't going to be at that ceiling because I think Franklin holds them back. He is the ultimate jokester in terms of game management when it matters. I have Nebraska at 5. There's Oregon, no, there's Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. I'd say there'd be a slight drop off to Penn State. Bigger drop off though to Nebraska. I think Penn State's still kind of in that
Yeah,
top tier.
I agree. I agree.
Nebraska at 5. I love what Rule's doing there. I think that they're going to be a physical team that can pass and also run. Their question is depth in the secondary. That's why I said Wisconsin matches up well with them, because even though I think Nebraska is a better team, Wisconsin with Van Dyke, with that O-line, and with Will Pauling is probably going to get more into the air raid of Phil Longo rather than last year when they retreated back into running the football. And their
Right.
defense for Wisconsin is kind of fast and more like defending the pass, and Nebraska wants to pass the ball more. So I just think that's a good matchup. But
That's going to
after
be a fascinating matchup, really is. And
yes,
Wisconsin got Tackett Curtis too, the best linebacker in the portal. So I mean, that's going to be. I'm fascinated by Wisconsin. I really am. Anyway, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
no, you're perfect. It actually it helps the flow as we
Yeah.
talked about. Yeah. I'm fascinated by them too. I'm lower on them after watching spring ball. Now, they didn't have a spring game, so that might be a little unfair to them, and I still think they're a top 25 team. They're going to be better than last year, and I think Fickle's on the right track. Their schedule's just insane though, but I'll get to that in a
Oh
few
yeah.
seconds. Rutgers I have at 6th. I think that yes, their schedule's easy, but because of their trench play, their defense, they'll be such a consistent team that you'll have to power rank them high. Like they won't have that upside that even Wisconsin will or USC that I have at 7th, but their level of play will be very consistent. I think Nebraska, Rutgers, and SC are in their own tier. USC by far having the highest upside out of all of them, but also
Oh
I
yeah.
think having the lowest floor too. I think USC is this team where I think no matter what they'll be better than last year, but their schedule could be anywhere from moderate to extremely tough. I could see them having a worse regular season record but being better just because of how like Notre Dame, LSU non-conference, and then a bunch of Big Ten teams that'll be able to run the ball and therefore match up well against a team in USC that's kind of the opposite of Michigan. Like they're all skill players, and I like the hires they made on defense, but you're not fixing that defense in year one,
Oh yeah.
especially the D line when they failed to get interior players. And then after SC, I think there's a slight drop off to Iowa and Wisconsin. I have Iowa at 8th. You just got to appreciate the consistency, the
You do.
defense, the again like winning 10 games with Deacon Hill. And it, I I I
It shouldn't
loathed,
happen, but it did.
yeah, I loathed watching them like win those like it was it was disgusting. Like I hated every minute of it. I was watching Iowa Illinois, and I was the biggest Illinois fan for that game, and it made me
That day, yes.
so sad when Caleb Johnson ran in for that touchdown. Like, oh, yep, this game's over. And then them getting shut out by Penn State, Tennessee, and Michigan. They lost a combined 101 to nothing. 101 to nothing in those three in those
It's
3 games.
I'm at a loss for words for last year's Iowa.
Yeah. Michigan
I
played
mean,
like one of their most anemic, boring games in Indy, and like just it was never a contest. It was ridiculous.
I
But you got
mean,
to appreciate
Michigan
the consistency.
Michigan didn't look like they were trying in that game. I mean,
No, it was
they
the
were having a party
worst.
on the sideline.
It was the
It was,
worst O line performance I'd seen from them since like the COVID
oh
year,
my gosh.
and they still like game controlled Iowa to death, which is what Iowa does to people. At ninth, I have Wisconsin. I mean, they play Alabama, Penn State, and Oregon. Very tough schedule. They have all of them at home. Schedule I just mentioned really for just because schedule doesn't really have a bearing on power rankings. That stuff's already taken. Like it has its own place, but power ranking is like a 6-6 team could be better than a 9-3 team in power rankings, of course.
Very true.
Wisconsin, I think, just has a deep O line, good coaching, and I think Tyler Van Dyke is an underrated, overhated quarterback. At 10th, I have Michigan State, Minnesota, Washington. I'd say those three teams are in their own tier because they all did well in acquiring portal players. Washington and Michigan State lost very good portal players as well. Minnesota didn't really lose anyone they cared about in the portal, but they all did well in the portal. They all have some type of new staff because Minnesota lost their defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi, who's a big part of their program. They also lost their quarterback. So they all have changes at these key positions, Michigan State and Washington especially. And they're all teams that not last. I nearly made the biggest mistake of my life in saying that Washington had a bad year last year, which they didn't. That would have been terrible.
At least you
Michigan,
didn't.
yeah, Michigan State and Minnesota had bad years last year. Washington didn't, but that's so easy to forget because of all the turmoil and turnover they've had ever since that national championship game appearance. And I think all of these teams have fairly high upside and high potential, but also a very low floor. Not the same ceiling that USC does. I think the most that these teams could do is win like 9, 10 games. That's even pushing it for some of those three. So
Yeah.
maybe 8, 9, and in some cases 10. That's the best they could do. They could also all have losing seasons. And they return a variety of production. Minnesota's top 20, Washington's close to dead last, Michigan State's middle of the road. But the portal and key changes, and kind of they're at a crossroads in a way. These three teams are, and they're also all coaching staffs and strength and conditioning staffs that I really like in one way or another. After that, Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois, Maryland, UCLA, and Indiana. I would say Northwestern, Purdue is in their own tier. Another slight drop off to Illinois, Maryland, and then a slight drop off to UCLA and Indiana. Northwestern's intriguing because they have a very
They
low
are.
ceiling, but they return top 10 in production. And depending on who they get in the portal at quarterback, because I assume they're going to try and get a portal QB since
Hopefully.
Brendan
For their sake.
Sullivan went to Iowa. That's a big pickup, by the way, for Iowa.
Especially
Because,
if because McNamara is, sorry to interrupt, but McNamara is injury prone, right?
yes,
So
and he may not be good even if he is healthy, because last
that is
year
true.
he looked a lot worse than he was at Michigan, which made me kind of sad. Purdue, they're great in the trenches. I love their size, especially at D tackle and interior O line. CJ Smith, I think, will be a weapon at wide receiver. And I'm not high on Hudson Card, but compared to the other Big Ten West quarterbacks, he was serviceable. And they
Oh
have
yeah.
Dylan Thieneman, too. So they have players. The question is, can they put it all together? And they once again have a tough schedule. Illinois, Maryland, UCLA, Indiana. They're all of them are not high in returning production, and all of them have been on the downturn in terms of recruiting over the past few seasons. For UCLA and Indiana, they have new coaches, a lot of new rosters, some returning players. I need to study more on some of these teams, but it is May after all. I'm going to continue to do
That
that.
is,
But I don't like the look for UCLA or Indiana. I mean, UCLA before Deshaun Foster was hired, I had them going 10-2, and Chip Kelly just getting kicked out the door in the middle of the year because I didn't
oh
think
yeah,
that their
it's
roster
just
was built well to handle the Big Ten. At least now they have Foster, and he should be given grace in year one, so the team like has some kind of consistency. But yeah, that's my power rankings.
and I mean I don't disagree with your power rankings at all, really. I think Minnesota's a little high for where they're at. If you look at their trajectory, it was a lot of 9-win seasons, and they've kind of been on a downward slope now. And I don't know if I trust an FCS quarterback in Max Brosmer to really do that much. But I didn't trust Ethan Kaliakmanis either. In Minnesota won 7 games, so I mean Northwestern is really an interesting bit. They have a low ceiling but a higher floor. Like they're kind of right there, and they don't really have the talent, but their coaching is just so good, in my opinion. You look at what David Braun did last year. Just I mean, he got it with 5 minutes to go in the season, and he turned out pretty darn okay. I mean, they beat Utah. Like
That was
I,
impressive.
it was it really. I was not expecting that at all, and when they went and beat Utah, I think they're a little higher on this, but I mean, it
Yeah.
is May after all said.
Yeah, I want to do a Northwestern video before the season starts. It's been so late just because I've been busy and my head's been bouncing around everywhere. But I was really impressed with the job they did. And I didn't talk about it a ton on my channel, but it was impressive with the players they had. And they have some underrated players. Like,
Oh yeah,
um, I forget his name. Ben Bryant was underrated at quarterback. Cam
when he was
Porter had,
healthy.
yeah, yeah, because he was injured. Cam Porter was a decent athlete. Cam Johnson, Bryce Kurtz, AJ Henning. I mean, they had some underrated receivers too, and they have some defensive players as well who earned some decent honors. So they're an interesting case study. Thank you so much for watching this episode of College Football with Sam. I appreciate it. And I would appreciate it even more if you were to hit that like button, comment your thoughts on this video down below, hit that big red subscribe button, and also click that notification bell so that your phone, laptop, or whatever device you use can ding or buzz whenever I release new content and notify you about it so that you can watch more videos like this. College Football with Sam is the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube. We're going to be doing a giveaway when we hit 20,000 subscribers, and we're trying to become one of the best, if not the best, college football channels on YouTube. Your support means so much, and to those of you who are subscribed to my Patreon or purchase merchandise from my store, the links to those are down in the description and pinned comment. Thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to my Patreons. Thanks to Crash2488 for being a Heisman member. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Lane, and Connor Little OH for being All-American members. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. Have a great day, guys. And if you're listening on Spotify or any non-YouTube podcast platform, please check the link in the channel description to find my YouTube channel. And if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to check out my Spotify, if you so please. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.